Hey, what's up? Right, okay, so the last video didn't turn out how I exactly wanted it to. We will try and rejig that in the next week or so. I'm still getting used to the editing software that I downloaded. Internet at my place is a bit slow. Right, so we're continuing with element B of the CBT. We've gone through the controls, so now you should be familiar with the controls. And then we've got our daily checks that you do on a bike before you actually ride them. Now, there's a certain system I work to, which is checking the bolt, doing the bolts checks, which is brakes, oil, lights, tires, steering, and suspension. So bolts for 2S's. All right. So we're going to go through that in the next 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever the video takes. All right. So I'll try and see what I can do. Right. We're going to move on to the brakes to start with. Right, so part of the bolts checks is checking your brakes. So with your brakes, what you want to do is push your bike forward and apply the front brake. Make sure it's got a good positive feel. Okay, if it comes right back into the handlebar or is a bit spongy, then get it checked out. Now what this does is when you pull that front brake in, it pushes fluid from your reservoir, which will be up here. Normally you've got a recommendation what you should use in it. Normally .3 or .4 brake fluid, it says on the top. A little sight glass here where you can tell how much fluid you've got. Okay, if you do need to fill that up, then you are in a bit of trouble. You'll probably have a hose that's leaking. So what will happen, it will push the brake fluid down through a hose, which goes normally down through the front of the bike, and then onto what's known as a caliper, a brake caliper. Now this is a brake caliper, and that's normally located down on the front wheel or on the back wheel, depending on what model of bike you have. Sometimes they'll have a drum brake, which is a different braking system again. Not that you see many of them around these days. Okay, and inside this brake caliper you have brake pads. Okay, now these brake pads, you want to make sure that this is nice and clean and not getting fouled in any way, shape or form. But your brake pads, making sure they're in good condition. Now when you check brake pads out, you normally need to get down quite low and have a look up underneath the caliper. Okay, and what happens is So we're starting off from the bolts checks, which is brakes. Okay, now with the brakes, what I'd personally do is push your bike forward and apply the front brake. Okay, make sure it stops sufficiently. All right. And what you're looking for is it not to be too spongy. Okay, if it's really spongy or comes right back in the handlebar, then get it checked out. Take it to your nearest garage and get it sorted. Unless you know what you're doing, which we will come on to that in later videos. So what happens here? You pull this brake lever in. It pushes fluid from this reservoir up here, which normally on the top of the reservoir it says either use .4 or .3 brake fluid, and it pushes that fluid down a hose into what's known as a brake caliper. Now a brake caliper is one of these. Now it pushes it down into here that you normally attach there, and it pushes these little pistons together. Okay, and normally in there you've got two brake pads which squeeze together. So you're looking down through the hose for any leaks or anything like that, any kinks in the hose, okay, and any leaks coming out this brake caliper. And like I say, what happens is these brake pads will be in here, and as you pull the lever in, these brake pads just kind of come together like so. Okay, but they'll clamp onto this disc and hopefully slow you down. So this is the main things you want to check on your brake. Check good positive feel. Make sure there's no leaks on the hoses or anything like that going down to your brakes. Checking your brake pad condition, making sure there's plenty of meat still left on them, and checking your disc isn't scored or warped in any way or shape or form. Now, if it is warped, what will happen is when you brake, you'll get slight juddering from the handlebars, okay, and that'll be the warped disc that will cause that. All right, so that's your brakes, okay. Okay, okay, not okay. Right, so moving on from the back brake and the front brake, we're going to go on to back brake now. Now with the back brake, what I'll tend to do is I'll normally sit on the bike. I mean, we're a bit different environment in here, but I'll normally sit on the bike and then probably start the bike up and try and sort of move it forward and keep that back brake on, because I know the front brake already works, but I try and move it forward with move forward a bit and then apply the back brake. Now you apply the back brake with having your foot on your heel on the bike here and your toes on the pedal there, and you just push down on it as you try and move away, and hopefully it'll stop and it's got a good positive feel, same as that front brake really. Moving on, to the brake hoses. So with the brake hoses, what you check is, again, for any kinks, any leaks, any damage or anything like that. Onto your reservoir, which is located here. Now with your brake reservoir, you've got a higher and lower amount. Now at the moment it's on just below the higher amount of maximum reading, and that's because there's decent pads in this. As a period of time, the pads will tend to wear out and your brake fluid will drop, but when you put new pads in, it'll come back up, right? Because it pushes the pistons together like that, and of course the oil's got to go somewhere. You come from that brake reservoir through the hose back to your caliper, which is located on the back there again, onto your pads and onto your disc, just checking that they're all in good condition, how they should be. And again, if you are in doubt with changing them or checking them, consult your handbook or go to your nearest garage. So that's your brakes. We've covered the brakes. Next up is your oil. Now with your oil, what you want to check is the levels. It's really important to have the correct level of oil in these bikes and clean oil. Get them serviced regular. With regular oil changes, these bikes will last a long time. This is one thing that everybody avoids. With the oil, this particular model here, it's got sight glass located down here. Now on that sight glass, it does have a higher or a maximum and minimum level. Now what I tend to do with these bikes is just fill them up just below the maximum level. You don't want to overfill them. Overfilling them is pretty bad. Okay, they'll start burning oil and it put more strain on the engine. And then underfilling them, you'll end up seizing the engine up. With the engine oils, so you've got the sight glass there. Then you've got, if you want to top it up, you just undo that one there. If I can do it, undo it. You'd undo that then and just top it up in there. Now you might need a funnel to do that. They don't make it the easiest on these bikes, but yeah, you'd top it up with recommended oil. The other option is sometimes these bikes have what's known as dipstick. So dipstick is just a little stick that sticks out about yay long, and it's got a maximum and minimum level. And all you want to do is just fill it up again just below the maximum level. All right, you don't want to overfill it. Once you've done that, you put that back on somehow. There we go. I'll get it in a minute. There we go. He's on. And then hopefully you're happy to ride away. Now the oils exist to serve a purpose, and that purpose is to keep the engine well lubricated and also keep the engine cool as well. Now, one main thing. With all my bikes, even a Ducati, I'll use not fully synthetic oil, because fully synthetic oil is actually designed for racetracks. Okay, if I was riding the Ducati around the race circuit, then I'll probably use fully synthetic. Because I ride it on the road, fully synthetic is way too good for that engine. It's not revving enough, and this is a problem with a lot of people that ride sports bikes. Yes, I might get slated about this, but this is common knowledge. I mean, you get all these truck bait or Power Rangers that go out on the road and they talk about using fully synthetic. Okay, the best oil to use is a semi-synthetic. It's a good oil. It's designed for the roads, and even the manufacturers recommend semi-synthetic. All right, so I'll probably get slated for that, but I don't give a shit, to be honest with you. Right, after the oil, we're going to check the lights. Now with the lights, what you do with the lights, just turn them on, and I'll check the high beam and low beam. So at the moment on this one, it's quite lucky because the low beam is already on. Put it on high beam, low beam. Nice and simple. I park it up against a wall. Also put my hand in front of it and see it reflecting. Then we come on to the indicators. So with your indicators, I check the left indicator. They're working. Right indicator, that's all working. And you put your hand in front of it. And then with your brake light, yep, that's nice and bright. And then just there, nice and bright again. All right. Something I did forget on the oil was the two-strokers. With the brake light, park it up against a reflective surface, or get someone to stand behind you, or put your hand over the back. Sometimes you'll have a back box, or the cowling might go over there a bit. All right. So that's your done brakes, oil, lights. Next thing is steering. So with the steering, what I do is push down on the back there. It's got a center stand, so it's quite easy. Turn the handlebars left and right. Make sure it turns nice and freely. No fouling on the cables or anything. Okay, no grinding down here on the bearings, so that's all turning nice and freely. Turns nice and freely like so. Okay, so I'm happy with that. And then we've got the suspension. Now with the suspension, what I tend to do is apply the front brake, push down on the front brake like so, and that will push the forks down. Now what I'm looking for on the forks is no knocking the head race bearings up around here, making sure that it goes down and returns nice and freely, and then checking the oil, the fork seals, and there's no oil leaking out of there. Normally on a motorcycle, the fork seals are the first thing that goes on these things. Then we come on to the rear suspension. Again, what I'd normally do is sit on the bike, bounce up and down, make sure there's no fluids, or it goes down and returns nice and freely. All right. So that is your basic machine controls, your daily checks before you even ride the bike. It does seem a bit long-winded, but to be honest, it only takes about 5 minutes to do. And if you park your bike in a garage or somewhere where you got to wheel it around to get it out, then you can check the brakes and stuff like that while you're doing that, and then the bike will warm up. Now with the oils, let the bike warm up before you ride them. Okay. In the morning, I'm not ready to go at 100 miles an hour. As soon as I get out of bed, I need to have my cup of coffee in the morning before I sort of start functioning, and it needs to take time for me to work, start getting motivated and moving. And it's the same with the engine. Okay, what you've got at the moment is at the moment nice cold engine, all the oil's done in the sump here. So when you start it up, all that oil's got to get up around the engine, lube the engine up nicely. And when you do ride these bikes off, just ride them nice and steady for a minute. Okay, don't go full flat out, full chat straight away. Ride them for a few miles before you get them, sort of give them a handful. So what I didn't cover on the oil was the two-strokers. Personal favourite of mine. Love two-strokes. They just got the different characteristics altogether, and hopefully in some later videos I'll be riding some two-strokers, not the mopeds. Well, I'll be riding the mopeds, but proper two-strokers like 250 two-strokes. Now with the two-stroke 250s, sometimes it can be a premix, which means you mix it with the petrol in the tank, which can be a bit of a pain in the ass, especially if you don't know the ratio of oil to petrol mix. All right. Most two-strokes, they will come with a separate tank. So what you'll have is one over under the seat, or sometimes they're underneath the petrol tank, or just tucked down somewhere. Now with them, all you have to do with them is just top it up with decent two-stroke oil. Now with two-stroke oil, it's really important to use really, really decent high-quality stuff. Several reasons. It smells absolutely awesome, and it sounds absolutely awesome as well. All right, so it is important to use decent oil. As well as that, yeah, it will let your engine last longer as well. All right. If you do have a 250 two-stroke or a 125 two-stroke, make sure you change the oil plugs and look after it, maintain it, because the two-strokes are quite finicky. All right. So that's your daily checks. We'll come on to the periodic checks, which will be your weekly checks in the next video. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I don't know, click, subscribe, like, share, whatever you want to do. I don't care. I hope you're enjoying it so far, but we will get some fun stuff up sooner or later. I'm actually working on a highlight video at the moment. There should be some pretty cool stuff on there, what to expect in future videos, but at the moment we're going to keep down to the basics of a CBT. Hopefully once the CBT stuff's done, we'll go on to the test stuff. We'll go on to different test categories of the A1 license, A2, and a full A license, and age categories and all that. So we'll get the CBT out of the way. Once the CBT is done, then we'll move on to the rest of it. All right, right. See you on the other side.